Good morning. This is the OHSU Effect Inside Health and Science at OHSU. Listen to this. 200,000 adults in Oregon live with diabetes. The majority of those people are obese. And for the first time in history, children's lives are expected to be shorter than their parents. So it's time to get going, Oregon. With me now on the OHSU Effect is Dr. Andrew Almond, a diabetes specialist and the director of the OHSU Harold Snitcher Diabetes Health Center. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us about the center first off.
So OHSU obviously has had diabetes services for many years, and they had pediatric diabetes services, adult diabetes services. We've had diabetes educators on both sides of that. But as of 2007, they became integrated in one comprehensive center so that all services were offered through one place with remodeled and updated facilities and lots of extra pieces added for the best care possible.
Where is that? Is that up on the hill or is that on the south waterfront?
So this is up in the Physicians Pavilion up on the hill.
Okay. So tell us about the Get Going program that you're sponsoring.
So the Get Going Oregon is an example of one of the outreach efforts of the Harold Snitzer Diabetes Health Center in conjunction with OHSU. It's really to get across the word that diabetes is a major problem, that it's really kind of a gateway disease to lots of other metabolic diseases. So it's the first thing that many people get before they get their heart disease. It's associated with high blood pressure and many other things, and that the best way to prevent it, and actually one of the ways to best treat it as well, is to be very active. And so Get Going Oregon is an effort to get businesses, to get schools, to get the whole state more engaged in trying to become active, trying to be healthier from that angle. And so it's a new event that was started last year, and we hope it'll just keep growing year after year.
Well, good. Can you give me some examples of maybe some events that are going on in the Portland area?
Well, the primary event, the kickoff was last Saturday, and so that is past, and it was a very successful, a significant increase from the year before in terms of number of people who are involved. And then the event is, the primary thought might be around the idea that's 30 for 30, which means trying to get people in groups to work together, whether it's families, whether it's businesses, whether it's different teams based on different backgrounds, to try and exercise 30 minutes a day for 30 days. So throughout October, and during that same time to emphasize things about improving their nutrition, supporting each other in this effort, and seeing if we can at least get things moving.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk about type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Briefly give me the difference for people who don't know.
Yeah, so in the end, all people with diabetes should be considered the same in terms of their risk for getting complications of diabetes, which is the reason we try to treat blood sugars and other aspects of diabetes. But there's differences in terms of why they get it and to some degree when they get it. So type 1 diabetes is when you destroy all the cells that produce insulin, and this is done because your immune system malfunctions and actually attacks your own cells in your pancreas that both sense glucose and then produce insulin that is responsible for getting glucose into the proper tissues. And so eventually you lose all those cells, and you can only be treated with insulin for type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is the one that traditionally was more for adults, is unfortunately happening at younger ages, is associated with both an inability of insulin to work properly and then subsequently not being able to make up the increased need for insulin because the beta cell, the cell that produces insulin, isn't functioning properly.
So is it safe to say that exercise is more important for that person with type 2 diabetes, or is it important for both?
Well, we think exercise is important for all people, for general health and for a sense of well-being, and usually keeps people motivated, keeps people feeling better, keeps better energy. But it is true that for type 2 diabetes, exercise is a larger component of the actual therapy of the disease, and we frequently would say that exercise or diet, but exercise even by itself, could be considered equivalent to any single medication that we could give the patient. It'll have the same effect in terms of controlling their diabetes. So.
Wow. Well, let's talk about glucose, because you mentioned that, especially with people with type 1 diabetes, they have to monitor their glucose levels and be mindful of what they're eating. Has there been any technological or research advances that kind of makes that process less tedious, less invasive?
Unfortunately, it's not at this time what we would like it to be. There is, however, I guess, a significant amount of research going on that will make a difference, particularly for type 1. And type 2 diabetes, you still should be monitoring. You should be monitoring targeted to see, what happens with certain exercise, what happens with different foods, what is your general trend. But with type 1, you have to monitor very frequently because you're totally relying on insulin. You're giving it in your method, which isn't the same as how the pancreas would have done it naturally, and you're going to make lots of mistakes. You need to be able to correct those. So there are efforts around better meters which have developed, and at OHSU in our center, we're doing a lot of work around working with continuous glucose sensors that would monitor blood sugar every 5 minutes. We have part of our group is working on what's called artificial pancreas, which would be a way to actually have the measurements translate into an insulin pump that would then automatically control the blood sugar as a little mechanized pancreas, basically. And so we're doing a fair amount of research in that area, and we think that in the future, that will be really important to people with type 1 diabetes. It's already made a difference, and we were involved in a national study just a year or so ago that was in New England Journal about how using that sort of first steps for combining the sensor with the pump would actually have significant improvements for kids and adults with type 1 diabetes.
Well, let's talk about kids and adults, because the Harold Schnitzer Diabetes Health Center is the only center on the West Coast that treats them both in the same place. I mean, why is that so important?
Yeah, it's unique that we have this sort of integrated center where all services are there, including for pediatrics, having a social worker and a psychologist. And the reason that that's important is that we believe that diabetes should be treated as a disease from the time of diagnosis until death, that our efforts are to keep people healthy and have a good quality of life throughout that time. That's why we have health as part of the name of our center. And that in fact, what we offer that's most important, I think, is this ability to transition through the ages, as in particular as people leave high school and go off to college or go off to work. There's lots of differences, changes in their lives that are related to their diabetes. We think we can do that better in this sort of a system. We can also, in this system, allow for the people who have type 2 diabetes to support the concept, support the center, support improvement in health in all people with diabetes.
Just about 30 seconds left. Is there any research underway that could make diabetes obsolete someday?
For type 1 diabetes, there's lots of people trying to do that research. It's been very slow. We think it's going to take still quite a few years. Type 2, it's even less likely. It's going to be more a change in how we live, how we act, how we feel about working together to change our lifestyle at the same time as finding out more about the genetics and nutritional factors that lead to diabetes.
Dr. Andrew Almond, thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Dr. Andrew Almond, the director of the OHSU Harold Schnitzer Diabetes Health Center, here on the OHSU Effect on FM News 101 KXL.